All right, can ashwagandha help with anxiety? Let's answer that in this video. At the end of the video, I'm going to give you either my thumbs up or thumbs down on this, so make sure to check that out. So first of all, let's look at the evidence for using ashwagandha for anxiety. Overall, I would say from what I've seen, the evidence is actually pretty solid. There's a few studies that looked at it. I'll cover those real quick. So the first one, study number 1, this was a small study already done in patients who had generalized anxiety disorder, that's GAD. They were also already on an SSRI, or a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. That could be Prozac, that could be Zoloft. Those sorts of medications are SSRIs. Now, they gave ashwagandha 1,000 milligrams once a day, and they did that for 6 weeks. They found that at the end of that period, the anxiety symptoms for the ashwagandha group decreased by 48% versus a decrease of 27% for the placebo group. Now, pointing out here, placebo group, you find this very commonly that you can still see a decrease in the placebo group. However, ashwagandha did a better job at lowering anxiety scores. We'll talk about that in a second, what I mean by that. In the second study, they did use some younger patients, age 16 and up. Also, they had general anxiety disorder, but the one thing about this study, they gave them ashwagandha root powder. That's one thing. And the second thing is they gave them sky-high doses. These are doses I would never recommend to anybody, but it was 4,000 milligrams of ashwagandha. The TID means 3 times daily. They did it for 60 days. Again, a sky-high dose of ashwagandha. They did see moderate improvement in these folks' general anxiety scores of 58%. So 58% improved. None in the placebo group improved. So that was very interesting. The last one is a meta-analysis. That's a fancy way of saying they looked at a bunch of different studies and kind of lumped them all into one. They found that adults with chronic stress, now there is technically a difference between stress and anxiety, but this was helpful because oftentimes anxiety has a stress component to it. But they gave those folks a couple of the studies in it. One was 240 milligrams of ashwagandha once a day, that's QD. They gave that as a root extract, or they gave 300 milligrams twice a day, okay? Both of those doses, they saw anxiety scores go down. Now, those are self-reported anxiety scores, but interestingly enough, they did find cortisol levels went down as well. This is important, it's something we'll talk about in a second. Now, studies are great. What are the feedback that I've gotten from people in the real world? Again, the feedback has been positive if they've taken it for anxiety. However, I want to issue a warning here. If you're going to do ashwagandha, the people I know who tend to do it long-term, say 6 months, or they've been on it a year or two, they tend to report that they almost at times begin to feel emotionless. It's difficult for them they just feel very flat. So keep that in mind. I don't really know what's going on there, but I've heard this from more than one person. Now, if you're going to take ashwagandha, the dosing and the type of ashwagandha appears to matter. So as far as dosing, I would personally stay at the lower end. I would go nowhere near that 12,000 milligram a day study that we mentioned. I'd stay, say, 300 milligrams daily, maybe start out with that, see how you tolerate it. You can maybe move up to twice a day dosing. Keep in mind that as far as type, most of the ashwagandha you're going to see, they try to what's called standardize it, and it's called withanolide content. Now that's basically a component of ashwagandha, what we believe to be the most effective part of it. So they try to standardize most of these supplements to contain usually around 5, 8, 10% of this withanolide content. So that's kind of what you want to look out for. I'll include a link to some products in the description if it's something you're interested in. I would be very careful about the type of ashwagandha you use, meaning be careful and look at the ingredient label, because some of these products have been found to have all sorts of other things added to them, whether they're amino acids or synthetic vitamin A, which you do not want to be taking. I'm not a big fan of that. We've seen calcium and iron added. So there's other things that can be added in there. By the way, they'll add in amino acids because some of the amino acids have been shown to benefit anxiety. But because we're just talking about ashwagandha, just try to stay with straight up ashwagandha if you do purchase a product. Now, potential side effects, I've done a video on this before, so feel free to go look that up. However, generally speaking, ashwagandha, it's well tolerated, not a lot of side effects, particularly at lower doses. However, as the doses go up, if you're going to see side effects, it tends to be stomach related, upset stomach, nausea, diarrhea, those sorts of things. Okay. Now, what about medication and supplement interactions? This is important because they do occur. So as far as prescription medications go, you want to watch out if you're on any CNS depressants, say for example, a sleeping pill. Benzodiazepines, those are another class of drugs generally used to treat anxiety. For example, Valium would be an example. Immunosuppressants, even thyroid hormones, blood pressure meds, diabetes meds have all shown the ability to potentially interact with ashwagandha. So make sure you have your pharmacist run an interaction check. Also, there is concern over them interacting with supplements. Again, I've done a video on ashwagandha interactions, so go watch that for more detail. But any supplement that you're taking that might lower the blood pressure or might cause sleepiness is cause for concern. Now, I mentioned earlier that ashwagandha did show the ability to lower cortisol, and that is very important for stress, potentially important for anxiety. Now, there are other factors that can contribute to you having high cortisol, and I wanted to mention that because sometimes we have this tendency, let's focus on supplements to lower cortisol when really it's a lifestyle issue. So that, for example, if you're under eating, if you're over exercising, if you're on an extreme diet like keto or carnivore, you're going to see cortisol levels go up. Okay, so you'll see thyroid go down, you'll get put on thyroid meds, and we got interactions. So it is important for you to consider other causes of high cortisol, not just taking ashwagandha to address it. Now, what's my overall take? Thumbs up, thumbs down? Generally speaking, I would give it a thumbs up. I do think it would be helpful. It's not something I would rely on. It's also not something I would take long term. I just don't think there's enough evidence for it. But it does appear to be effective and helpful for anxiety, so definitely worth a shot. Make sure to follow some of those dosing suggestions earlier. Also, I'll include a link to the references, the studies that I referenced. So if you have insomnia, you can click on those, go read those. Again, guys, hope the video was helpful. Let me know in the comments other topics that you'd like me to cover. Real quick point, I get more and more questions from people in situations asking my take. I'm not your pharmacist, I'm not your doctor, so I can't answer those. So if you do post those and I don't get you don't get an answer, that's why. That's not something I'm able to address. So, but again, let me know in the comments other topics that you'd like me to cover. Hope this was helpful. See you in the next one. Thank you.